Okay, Apple just introduced out of nowhere the M2 and M2 Pro Mac Mini, and I'm here with my trusty, super powerful and super expensive Mac Studio, asking, is it really better than the Mac Studio? Is it really worth to upgrade and switch from the Mac Studio to the M1 Pro Mac Mini? Which one should you get and why? When Apple introduced the M1 Mac Mini, it was really small but very powerful and I was blown away, but it was a little bit limited. So when the Mac Studio came out, I jumped on the train, I saved my money and I got it, and I'm super happy with that. But this M2 Pro Mac Mini is really promising. The design is the same of the original Mac Mini, but for this reason Apple was able to reduce the price of the entry model. But in this small package, is it enough to include a really effective enough cooling system? Because we saw that M2 MacBook Pro and Air are really hot. Only the M2 Pro model rocks 4 Thunderbolt ports, which is the same number on the Mac Studio, but on the front we don't see any port, while on the Mac Studio we have 2 USB-C and 1 card reader, which is very handy for video and photo editors, just to plug your SD card in front. However, the M2 Mac Mini with Pro processor has updated HDMI 2.1, which support up to 8K 60. If you, like me, have an 8K TV, this is really handy, and it's a feature that I wish the Mac Studio had, even though I'm not sure if you can connect via Thunderbolt 4 port to HDMI. You probably should be able to get 8K 60 as well. However, the Mac Studio has included the 10 gigabit Ethernet port by default, while on the M2 Pro Mac Mini you have to spend $100 more, which is a little bit tricky. We'll see it later in the video. Now, the biggest news is the processor, of course. The M2 Pro 12 CPU cores against the 10 of the M1 Max Mac Studio, and those cores are faster than the Mac Studio, so technically it should be faster in single core and even in multi-core task. But on paper the Mac Mini should be even faster for all these CPU intensive tasks like photo editing, for example. So if you export 50 photos in Photoshop or Lightroom, you should see a small improvement, but I'm not sure of how much, because another important thing is the RAM, the unified memory, how Apple calls, because the Mac Studio has 32 gigs of RAM, while the base model Mac Mini with M2 Pro has 16, and of course you can upgrade up to 32, but you need to spend extra money and it starts to sum up, and I'm not sure if it's a good value. So I'm really curious to see if M2 Pro with 16 gigs is faster than M1 Max with 32 gigs of RAM. I'm not so sure about that. You can customize the M2 Pro up to 19 cores of GPU, while the M1 Max by default it has 24 cores and it can be upgraded up to 32. And here the real winner is the Mac Studio, because it has so much more power even in the base model. I decided to upgrade to the 32 core GPU, and even though I was able to find the breaking point of this really powerful Mac Studio, I did a really complex timeline with Sony a7 IV, H.265 4K 60 videos, 422 10-bit, with a lot of slow motion, speed ramping, color grading, effect and so on, all by using my 2 monitors that I have here, a 5K at 120Hz and a 4K 60 monitors in HDR. All of these started to lag and slow down in playback in Final Cut Pro. So I really think that the Mac Studio is meant for people which are more like me, so make much more intensive tasks, and on the other hand, the M2 Pro Mac Mini is a really good value for medium level people that make a lot of photo editing and 4K normal video editing. But if when I bought the Mac Studio exists the Mac Mini with M2 Pro, which one will I have chosen? Well, stay tuned until the end of the video to know the answer to this question. But at the end of the day, what really matters is the value for the money. So let's talk about price. The base model M2 Pro Mac Mini comes with a 10 CPU, 16 GPU, 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs storage for a whopping $12.99. I think that this price is really tremendous value. If this Mac can work for you, just go pre-order it, because we'll see for sure a limited stock at the beginning, and just buy it. But if you start to sum up, you can make some upgrades. If you make video editing, I suggest you to get the 19-core CPU for just $300. Talking about storage, Fi12 is really good, but macOS really starts to eat up the storage. You can upgrade the storage with $200 for 1 terabyte. But in my opinion, the 4 Thunderbolt 4 ports can be used for external storage, so I really don't see why. And for $100, the 10 gigabit Ethernet. So if you do all of these upgrades, you go to $18.99, but you still have 16 gigs of memory. So if you add 32, you go to $22.99, but the Mac Studio starts at $19.99, has 2 less CPU cores, but has many more GPU cores, are 24 against 19. Also, it has a better cooling for sure, and the ports on the front. From my experience, when I video edit and use Final Cut Pro with the latest update, it uses a lot of RAM, and sometimes, even though I have 32 gigs, it uses 8 gigs more of swap storage. So if you're doing video editing, we can assume that Final Cut Pro can take advantage of all the RAM that you have. So if you do photo editing, you can do really intensive photo editing, but I really think that the M2 Pro Mac Mini is perfect for you. Just upgrade the storage if you want, or the RAM, and you're done. So if you make just YouTube talking head stuff, I think the M2 Pro Mac Mini is for sure the best. I would recommend to upgrade to a 32 gigs of RAM, stay with the Fi12 standard, and you are around $1,700. Should you upgrade from the M1 Max Mac Studio? Absolutely not. I'm waiting for the Max Tech videos that will compare them, but I'm pretty sure that there will be no real world difference. The M1 Max is still very powerful, and it's not less powerful than M2 Pro. And the final question is, which one would I buy if I didn't have the Mac Studio? Well, I know myself, and I'm pretty sure that I will start to make some really expensive upgrades to the M2 Pro, and I will end to cost more than the Mac Studio. So in any case, I will have bought the Mac Studio. But what about the M2 Max Mac Studio? Well, I'm not really sure that we will see it really soon, because there are rumors that the Mac Pro, the new Mac Pro with the Apple Silicon chip, will mount an M2 Max and M2 Ultra. So I'm not so sure if we will see it on the Mac Studio. And even though if we will see that, I'm not sure it will be an incremental upgrade. Very important. So hopefully I answered your question. Please comment and tell me your opinion. Which configuration are you getting of either of them? And be sure to subscribe for more videos on M2 Max. And as always, stay tuned on Shades of Tech. Ciao!